just admiring. I wasn't sure whether that's wallpaper on your back wall or whether it's actual bricks, because I've been having this discussion with my fiance about our redecoration, and I like the wallpaper which looks like bricks. So is that bricks or is it wallpaper?
That's actual bricks. I'm the real thing.
Right. Okay. Right. Well, I can't do that here. You're looking good. You're sounding good. How is life at the moment, having just left Southend?
It's a little bit up in the air when you lose your position, as you well know, Chris. You're sort of at a loose end. You're planning for games, and you're planning for not just one game, but for a set of games to get you to the Christmas period. And you've got all these hurdles to get through and get over, and then all of a sudden the plug's pulled from underneath you, and you now look for a different direction. And that's what I'm doing at the moment, to tell you the truth. I'm thinking, is football the way it's going forward in terms of management? It's getting shorter in terms of tenure, length of time. The impatience of a lot of people is out there for everybody to see. So I'm thinking about maybe a different direction, Chris.
Right. Well, we'll maybe talk about that a little bit later on. Let's go back to the very start, when you were a young lad in the Northeast, growing up in South Shields, and you became a Sunderland fan. So what got you into football, and why Sunderland?
Yeah, it's a good question regarding South Shields. Is sort of right bang in the middle between Sunderland and Newcastle. Geographically, it's 5 miles from both. My father took me to 1967 Fairs Cup up Jesdoza, the Hungarian champions, and that was the first time I went to Newcastle, and that was in the Gallowgate end. There was 60-odd thousand at the game, 60, I think it was about 67, 68,000 at the game. Unbelievable atmosphere, but it for some reason didn't get my attention, and I've often wondered why. I can't really put me head on that one, but then my mother took me to the quarterfinals of the FA Cup in the 1973 Sunderland Cup run to the Fulwell end on a Wednesday night, Man City, and we got through that, beat Arsenal. I mean, it was just unbelievable, the FA Cup run, and then found ourselves against Leeds in the final, the mighty Leeds, and I couldn't get a ticket for the game, but I sat and watched that game with great interest from, remember the old days in the FA Cup final when you turned the telly on at 9 o'clock in the morning and the broadcasting had started. So I watched that with great interest, and I just fell in love with Jimmy Montgomery, double save, Bobby Kerr, Bob Stokoe, Ian Porterfield. I just fell in love with it, and that in the start of the support of Sunderland as opposed to Newcastle.
Well, that's the first FA Cup final that I can remember as well, but also the one where I knew that I was either going to become a football commentator or a manager, because when Ian Porterfield scored, my dad jumped up and said, "They've done it, they've done it." And I looked at my watch and I said, "No, they haven't. There's still half an hour or so to go." So I knew then that I was going to have a career of some sort, never good enough to play or manage. Tell us about your playing career then, because you stayed in the Northeast, didn't you? But played a couple of hundred games for Hartlepool at the start of your career.
Yes, it was an interesting start to a career. I wouldn't imagine that it happens these days, to tell you the truth. I don't think you often get a needle in a haystack these days. You don't often get one that falls through the net and then retrieved. I had a couple of trials. I was playing non-league football. I was playing Sunday league football. I was playing for a non-league outfit called St Hilda's on a Saturday. I played for a pub team called the Red Duster on a Sunday. We had a decent side. We had players that had trials at Bristol City, at Sunderland, at Newcastle. We'd been quite a few places. Bobby Davison played in the same team. Bobby Davison obviously eventually went on to have a great career himself, and he's still coaching, I think, at this moment in time abroad.
He was at Leeds Derby as a player, wasn't he?
That's right, Leeds, Derby, Huddersfield. I think we both started our careers at some stage at Halifax Town in Yorkshire, and it was one of them where I started serving my time as an electrician. I went out of the game. I wasn't even in the game to start off with, but non-league football, you're not anywhere near it, but you're just playing for the enjoyment. But I started as an apprentice electrician at a factory called Pyrotechnics on the banks of the Tyne. And then I started drifting into playing for Hartlepool United reserves. I got spotted by one of the directors in a Sunday league game, and he asked me if I wanted to come down. And it was Tuesday and Thursday nights training, and I did. And at the end of that season, I found myself in the first team with about 5 or 6 games to go, playing alongside the likes of Billy Ayres. I don't know if you remember Billy Ayres.
I do.
Legend of the game. Great guy.
Your manager at Halifax.
That's right. And what an apprenticeship under him. You know, he was just a leader of men. It was fantastic to play alongside and just to brush alongside people like himself, Keith Houchin, Bob Newton. You know, there was some good footballers at that level. And then at the end of their time, Bobby Kerr joined us at Hartlepool, and John Bird joined us, and Ray Kennedy. You know, so it was a good start to a career, but a little bit late. You know, it was like 20 to 25 was when I was literally serving my apprenticeship. When I'd finished my apprenticeship as an electrician, I started serving my time as a footballer, and I think that was the good founding that I got. You know, the foundation. When I 25, I moved to Halifax and then on to Bolton, and that was probably, I would have thought, my big career move would have been the Bolton move. You know, you're moving to a club that's more recognised, you know, founder members of the Football League, all of that kind of stuff. And you realise you're playing in front of a crowd then, which were, you know, 7,000 and 8,000 at the time compared to 1,500s at Hartlepool and Halifax.
Very different today in terms of players coming into the game with an apprenticeship behind them, like you as an electrician, because of the academy system. And we saw the other day there was a lad in. Was it Arsenal have signed an 8-year-old boy, something like that, because they're in the system now from a very, very early days. I think there was a player in the Netherlands at Ajax was signed as a 4-year-old, which is really quite astonishing. How important is it, do you think, and how much emphasis is put on the players' education in the academies now as they're coming through, particularly in the Premier League clubs?
I'm a big believer in education right the way through. I mean, I'm hopefully going to go to St John Moores University in December to get my diploma, which I studied this year in the last year in India, and obviously continuation when I came across here. So I don't think you can ever underestimate the value of education right the way through life. And to sign a 4-year-old for me is ridiculous in my head. I can't really fathom it out. I don't really understand it. Yes, I get the DNA of the parents and all that kind of stuff, but let's get past that and go to maybe 14, 15, 16-year-old when everybody's seen maybe the fruits of some kind of labour, whether it be parents, whether it be teaching, whether it be coaching. And you're getting to a stage where you're getting boys and girls that want to be professional, that want to be in the game of football, and you get that apprenticeship at 16. I think the apprenticeship of life is important. You know, if you give up education because you think you're going to be a professional footballer, and then you read the statistics of a 2% success rate, that for me is not a success rate. That's a failure rate. You know, 98% of players that come in at whatever level find themselves on a scrap heap at 16, and it's not right. You know, that for me, I know that's the downside to football, unfortunately. You know, and there's only a certain amount can, but to be able to blow that bubble up and paint that picture to a boy or a girl at such a young age is phenomenal. Misrepresentation, and education therefore has to run concurrently, because if you don't, you'll end up on a scrap heap of life as opposed to anything else, just football. So I'm a big believer in whatever you do, always have something running concurrently with it. And what a great foil for the failure of football education is.
Now, you spent some time as a player at Bolton, as you mentioned, and then your coaching career really took off when you were assistant to Sam Allardyce there, and he was one of the really at the vanguard of sports science and technology in terms of the player tracking and everything. How do you think that has transformed the game? And we've got quite a few of our students who do analysis with us this morning.
It's vitally important. I think it's, as you say, you're at the start of it. In the 96, 97 season when we came together, and then went on from there. From Blackpool, we went our separate ways. I went to Bolton with Colin Todd. Sam went his way, and then we came back together in '99. And by that time, I'd had a couple of years with Colin Todd, who was a different kind of coach. Colin Todd was more the purist, more the football talented, driven coach, who saw ability and brought it in and just left it to get on with its own devices. Whereas Sam was far from that. Sam was the other way around. He liked, obviously, the talented side of things. But if you couldn't buy the talent or afford the talent, then you had to nurture, produce, enhance, assist, do whatever you could do to help that talent that you brought in. And that's where the thought process came into analysis and numbers and strength and condition and prozone and psychology. And every stone that you could unturn or over, it would be turned over, rolled over a million times and spat out the other end. And we used to grind down and précis and get into every little nook and cranny that you possibly could do to maximize the resource of what was in front of you, which was a player. But I go back to when we were Blackpool together. We didn't have them resources, myself and Sam, and we used to play with psychology, and I think this is a key part. What's going on between the ears is a key part to the success of any footballer or the success of any team. And we used to play with it to a certain extent with sayings and quotations and pre-match talks on flip charts, etc., etc. But when we got to Bolton, we had a little bit more resources. We had Prozone to play with, and we enhanced Prozone. We took Prozone from version 1 to version 3. Not just ourselves, Steve McLaren was around doing exactly the same thing, and everybody was pushing the boundaries, even to the extent where, it's almost like a blank sheet of paper. When a player walks into your changing room, what can you give him? What can you do to help him? And then consequently, you mold that together into a team formation. And we got lucky on a couple of occasions, no doubt about it. But we certainly were unlucky with one or two as well. But the catalyst to all the success that we had at Bolton was Sam's signing of quality players and how he managed to do that. I don't think even Sam recognised that. He just managed to get these players like Okocha and Yorkaevin and Bruno Ngotti and Campo. And I mean, they were world legends. They had reputations before they even came through the door. And then to try and impose Sam Allardyce's ways on them was the interesting part, because Sam had his own ways and he wasn't going to compromise them ways. He believed that he'll give you everything you need. But maybe the likes of Ivan Campo didn't understand that. And quite often there would be a little get together, a little set to on the training ground. And I know who won that one.
Well, I used to cover quite a few of the Bolton games actually at that time for TalkSport. I always used to really enjoy going there when you had the likes of Nicholas Anelka as well,
Yeah.
even though he went through a really barren spell for a while by his standards, didn't he? Can you shed any light on this story about Ivan Campo? Is it true that he used to go back to Madrid to get his hair cut because he only trusted a hairdresser in Madrid to do it? He couldn't find anybody in Bolton to sort out his barnet.
It's a classic story. It's a classic Ivan Campo. I mean, I can enhance them stories without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, I remember one time where we flew down. We tried to find out every little percentage that we possibly can to be better than the opposition. And we were playing Southampton one Tuesday night, and we decided to fly down on the day. And Sam's ability to sell, and I mean that with all due respect, his commercial brain was a lot better than most managers, and he decided to sell the flight to the supporters by giving them a little insight on match day of what match day preparation was all about, the team talk, the preparation, the tactics. It was all on a flip chart, and it was in the airport lounge, and we were all in the airport lounge. There was about 200 supporters, and he was doing a team talk to the supporters. This was like 3, 4, 5 hours before the players had received it. So that's the innovative side of Sam Allardyce. But we got beat 4-0 that game, and I remember sitting on on the tarmac at Manchester Airport on a bus that was taking us back to the Reebok Stadium, which it was called at that time. And Sam said to me, tell the players 8 o'clock in the analysis room tomorrow morning. And now I'm like looking at the watch and it's about 1:30 in the morning already. And we're looking around and I'm walking down the coach and the players' heads were shaking. And obviously when you see Ivan's head shake, you can see everything shake because it's the hair, it's the head, it's the disrespect, it's the, you name it. But they all bought into it. They had to be there or you know, you had to, well, if you didn't, you had Sam Allardyce to deal with. And even though Ivan Campo was such a big player and great reputation, I think the fear factor of the big fella was there for everybody to see. And the respect that he got for that was one of the main reasons why we got the success that we did.
You then left, didn't you, and went from being assistant manager to becoming manager at Derby. Why did you want to make that change?
I always did. It was one of them where it was not a case of when I came into coaching at Blackpool, did I just want to be the best number 2 in the world? No. I admired the managers that I worked with. I admired the managers that I played under, you know, Phil Neal, Bruce Rioch, and then Colin Todd when I worked with him, and Sam Allardyce, and all the way along, I wanted to be the guy that made the decision, the final decision. I wanted to be the guy that picked the team. I didn't want to be the whipping boy that did everything necessary to get the team out there and then get no credit for it, you know. So I suppose it's an egotistical thing. I think it's a lot to do with the fact of what you think you can achieve or what you think you are as a person. And don't get me wrong, it was an apprenticeship second to none under Sam. I have to say it. You know, I had 5-6 years with him, and we, you know, when I first came to Bolton Wanderers in 88, 89, you're talking about second division football. And when we left, we're in Europe, you know, so you're challenging for honours at the top end of the Premier League, in the top 6 or 7. And that's the reason why we challenged, we got into Europe. So it was a job well done over the course of the 15, 16 years I'd been at the football club. But I'd always harboured that desire. And what you can only be said is one word inside you that it drives you to distraction. That I had a desire to be the number 1, and consequently, I followed that dream.
It didn't work out at Derby, but you were quickly back in the game at Hull City, and you took them from the relegation zone in the Championship into the Premier League in 18 months, which is a heck of an achievement. So how did you do that, and how much of what you'd learned at Bolton with Sam under using the Pro Zone and all the science, how much of that did you take to Hull with you?
It was vitally important, you know, but I will always say that the experience, unless you've done that, you know, the manager role, where you've sat behind that desk for the first day, and a lot of people have said this to you, you sat behind that desk for the first day and then realised what it is all about, the pressures and the outside influences that can distract you and drive you to distraction are there for me to see and everybody else that's managed. And that moment at Derby, when that happened to me, and then the realisation of what Sam had been under and all the times I'd been banging at his door saying we should do this and we should do that. And he took me words. Sometimes he didn't take me word other times. And all of them decision-making processes that we went through under Sam Allardyce at Bolton were being realised by me at Derby. And if I hadn't done the Derby thing, I couldn't have done the whole thing. I'd guarantee you that, you know. So I put the two of them together. And I wouldn't say it's a 50-50 by any stretch of the imagination, but that is a proper apprenticeship, you know, 6 years under the big fella, then even 6 months at Derby County. And what I faced, you know, it was such a steep learning curve for me that without that, I wouldn't have done what I did at Hull City. But then taking all the, you know, the strength and conditioning work that we had done, you know, the Olympic lifting, which kept the injury levels down at the club. You know, I think we traded the first year, we traded in the Premier League at something like 2.1 injuries per week. For a 25-man squad, that's brilliant. That's nothing short of brilliant. And that's down to strength and conditioning, down to interdepartmental discipline. It's down to a lot of things that football is not even related to. And that all came from Bolton.
Well, fascinating insight there. When you stayed up, was that a bigger achievement than getting up in the first place? And also on that day that you stayed up, I remember that day very, very well because I was commentating on Sunderland against Chelsea. Manchester United were playing you at Hull, and Newcastle, who did go down, were away at Aston Villa. Now, your game finished, then the Sunderland game finished, and Villa Newcastle was still going on. And Newcastle had to win at that stage. Sunderland and Hull had both lost. So as long as Newcastle could win, they would stay up. They didn't. They didn't even have a shot on target in a dreadful 0-0 game. Now, the Sunderland and Chelsea players stayed out on the pitch. And the following season, the opening shots on Match of the Day saw Sunderland fans like cheering like that. It wasn't a goal that they were cheering. It was cheering the final whistle down at Aston Villa, which had sent Newcastle down. Now, as a Sunderland fan, and you were on the pitch talking with Sir Alex Ferguson, what was your reaction when, as a Sunderland fan, not only had you as manager of Hull City stayed up, but as a Sunderland fan, the Mags had gone down?
It's unbelievable,
That must
isn't
have been Christmas and birthday and Easter all rolled into one.
The hairs on the back of my neck are standing up with you talking through that that whole day. And to add a little bit of spice to it as well, Middlesbrough went down as well. And you think about it, Middlesbrough's manager at the time is the England manager now. And Newcastle's manager is the legendary Alan Shearer, you know. Sunderland survived. Ricky Sabraga was in charge. We survived. I was in charge. Sir Alex Ferguson was saying to me, "What's the score?" He didn't know the score. And you know what he's like. He knows everything about everybody. And when obviously there was a fist pumping when I heard the Newcastle result, and that was down to a lot of things. It wasn't personal where Newcastle were concerned. It wasn't personal where Sunderland were concerned. But I'm guaranteeing you, it was personal where Hull City were concerned. It was not a lifelong ambition or anything like that. I just remembered the day when we got promoted through the playoffs at Wembley, and I remember seeing 40,000 Hull City fans to my left-hand side and seeing 40,000 Bristol City fans to my right-hand side and seeing Gary Johnson and the difference between me and him and the difference between the two sets of supporters and the difference that would make to everybody's life, whether you lost that game or won that game. And then we're now at the end of another season and we're going through it again. And the feeling it far outweighed that loneliness, and I call it loneliness because I stood in that dugout and I couldn't really see anybody. I couldn't feel anybody. All I just knew that we had achieved something that was probably the greatest achievement that I had ever come anywhere near. And the greatest achievement that people say, you know, it's the biggest game in football, the playoff final, etc., etc. But then we quickly have to get ready for, because of the playoffs and the delay at the end of the season, you quickly have to get ready for a Premier League encounter. And then everybody in the world is saying that you're going to finish bottom of the league and with less points than Derby County had achieved, which was 12. And you're 1 to 20 favourites to get relegated, finishing 20th. And all of these challenges are getting thrown at you within minutes of getting promoted. And you think, whoa, slow down. Let's surround ourselves with good people and become a little bit, not impregnable, but, you know, we have to build something here from within. And I think the previous lady, Holly, had just asked me a question of you know, how did you manage to achieve that in such a short space of time? When you get promoted automatically, which I did at Bolton Wanderers with Colin Todd, we had 99 points and we were winning every week. And you get that feel, that vibe, and you get that winning mentality, and it just becomes natural. When you're winning through the playoffs, there's such a delay in it, and you're not winning every week. You're finishing 6th possibly in the championship, so you're not winning every week. But you have an emotion that is almost untouchable. You have this vibe about you that you can't really describe unless you've been in that situation. That it doesn't matter what people throw at you, you can handle. And that's exactly how it felt at the start of that season. And obviously we had a record start, 9 games, 20 points on board. And that's the thing that helped us survive in the end.
And you had that wonderful newspaper headline, I think it was after you'd beaten Arsenal, wasn't it, down in London? For anybody who likes the House Martins,
Yeah.
their album was called London 0, Hull 4, and it was your fourth win, which I'm sure somebody had been waiting to use that headline. You mentioned Gary Johnson there. When you were at Southend recently, you played at Torquay, where he's manager now. Did you mind go back? Did you have a conversation about that day and say a bit different now?
I think he got his own back. I think they beat us 1-0. They beat us 1-0 in the 87th or 88th minute. I thought, here we go. This is football in its weird way of turning things around and getting you back. Not necessarily in a nasty way, because I've got to say this. I felt for Gary that day. A lot of people say you don't feel for the opposition manager, you just get on with celebrating. No, hold on a second. There's a guy along there that probably doesn't deserve what he's getting here. He had a great season, had a fantastic season, a wonderful club. He had built it up. And within, I don't know how many games of the next season, he found himself out of work. That's the nature of the beast. And that's what you stare at. That it's almost an abyss, you stare at that for a moment in time. And I was staring at an abyss above me, which was called this wonderful Premier League. And he was looking at maybe an abyss in the Championship that he had to have a good start, or he knew what was coming. And that's what us managers know. You know what's coming if you don't have a good start the following year, having been beaten in the playoff final.
One thing that many people remember you for, Phil, from when you were at Hull City, not just Hull City supporters, but when you were playing at the Etihad and you were getting, you're not the only team to get a bit of a trouncing at the Etihad, but you were getting a bit of a stuffing at the Etihad, and you had your halftime team talk out on the pitch rather than back in the dressing room, and lots of people had their say about that at the time and subsequently. How do you reflect on that now?
With fondness, to tell you the truth, it was a moment in my career that I remember distinctly well, because we survived that year. Now, whatever 38 games throws at you, as I've just said, 9 games start with 20 points return. It's probably, I don't know if it is the best one, but of a newly promoted team, certainly a newly promoted team that had never been there before. That in itself was a record. And then you're looking at 9 games gone, 29 games to go. Everybody knows how tough it's going to be. I think the start of it was an eye-opener for me, because nobody respected us. And I don't mean that nastily. I think everybody just thought, they read the headlines and they thought Hull City were going to be automatic, cannon fodder for going down. So they didn't really do any homework on us. And I'm including the likes of Arsene Wenger at Arsenal. I think Harry Redknapp was managed. No, sorry, it was Wandy Ramos was at Spurs. We beat them. Newcastle, we went to St James's Park. I think Alan Shearer had resigned at the end of that season. So I'm trying to think who was manager at the time. But all these managers who had been around for a number of years and done a lot of homework on the opposition, I think they just read the headlines and believed it. So they showed us a little bit of disrespect by not preparing for it. And consequently, we had a great start. We were playing free. We were playing on the back end of the fact that we've been promoted literally not so long ago in great circumstances. So all of these things were playing a big part in our psyche, but the opposition were not lying down, but not really showing up. And then after 9 games, they decided we were a threat, and everybody was doing their homework. And I always remember going to Harry Redknapp. He was managing Portsmouth, and they had a system against us. And they had a way of playing that system was diagonal balls, and they absolutely diagonal balled us to death. Left wing back to right wing back, opposite sides, and they drew us across and switched play quickly. And we got turned over at Portsmouth, and that was the day I thought, somebody's done the homework. Somebody actually now respects us. We've now arrived. And then consequently after that, it was a difficult season. But, 4-0 at the Etihad was no shock to a lot of people. But at the same time, it was a shock to us the way our team played. Our team didn't turn up that day, and we always turned up. We always turned up physically. We always turned up by giving, I don't know, could you say sweat on the shirt, because of the working class mentality of the area. I always had a relative feeling for that, and that's the way we used to play our football. But we were walked on by a team that was better than us, no doubt about it. But we were walked all over by a team that wasn't really performing, which was not Hull City's way.
It's interesting what you say there about Portsmouth and they've done their homework on you, because I've lost count of the number of managers that have said to me when I've been doing pre-match interviews with them, oh, we don't worry about the opposition, we let them worry about us. But how much work does a team do in the build-up to a game based on the specific opposition they're doing, and in this day and age as well, rely on the work from the analysis department?
This day and age is massive. This day and age is the analysis department play a massive role in the way the game's approached, not just by the media, because they've got their analysis departments as well, but by the opposition, the management team. It's really a computer game now. It really is. You know, it's one of these where if one player is slightly out of position at any one given time or any moment in the game, they can be exposed because of the amount of work the analysis department do. If there's a weakness in an opposition's team, whether it be a technical weakness or a tactical weakness or a shape or whatever, anybody can say to you, you know, the opposition's playing 3-5-2. It's the shape of that midfield normally in a 3-5-2 that can catch a team out, whether he's playing two sitting midfield players and one advanced, whether they've got a number 10, whether they play the 9 and the 10 slightly, off each other. A 4-4-2 could get overloaded on the outside with two wingers and fullbacks against one wing back, and how you defend against that. There's all ways of... It's a multicoloured game of chess nowadays, and the analysis department are vital in that cog. But it's not just the analysis department, it's the understanding of the analysis department by the management. And I think the coming together of management and analysis department is a success story in the modern day game.
You talk about the media having their own analysis departments. By that, I take it you're partly referring at least to the Monday Night Football, Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher. Do managers watch that and pick things up and think, yeah, I noticed that about my team. You've told me something.
They can do. Yeah, they can do. It's not. Listen, as far as I'm concerned, Pep Guardiola, fabulous coach, great manager. Jurgen Klopp, you can name them. The top managers, and they don't leave a stone unturned. You know, they actually cover all the bases as best they possibly can. But if you've got quality in your backroom staff, if you've got a senior management team or a junior management team that's full of quality, you can never underestimate that. But you've also got to have people that believe in themselves as well, you know, and no use having an analysis department if they're frightened to say to the manager, well, you got that wrong. You know, we should have done this, or you need to do that. You've got to be, as a manager, you've got to be approachable. And if you're not, you're in trouble. You know, it's not a one-man band by any stretch of the imagination. Going back to the 1973 Cup final in Sunderland, Bob Stokel, you probably never even heard of him until the moment he ran on the pitch with his trilby on and embraced Jimmy Montgomery. You were never heard of. You know, there wasn't such a thing in them days. But now it's an army. You're against an army of backroom staff that are clever and they're intelligent and they're intellectual, and they can make a fool of you if you just think you're a football manager, and that's all it takes.
Aside from coaching and managing in this country, you've been out to India in the IPL, the football version of the IPL. Tell us about that with your time with Hyderabad. How did it come about, and what was it like out there?
Yeah, it's the ISL. It's called, and it's in its eighth season now. I went there out there in season 5. My old striker that I played with at Bolton Wanderers, Trevor Morgan, bit of a legend over there at East Bengal. He's won titles. He's won I-League titles. He's won competitions. He's won AFC tournaments. He's done brilliant for flying the flag for English managers abroad. And it's not much recognised, to tell you the truth. But Trevor played in a Bolton Wanderers team that got promoted a couple of times with myself back in the late 80s, early 90s, ex-Bournemouth. I think he scored a famous goal against Manchester United one year in the FA Cup. And Trevor decided to live life in Australia with his missus and his family, and eventually ended up in India. And he was applying for the job at Pune City. And the prerequisite of the job was you had to have managed in the top flight division from where you were coming from. Well, he had just finished with the Bhutan national team, so he didn't actually tick that box, didn't qualify for it. But I was out of work at the time, and he recommended me, and the rest's history, as it were. But I kept him on board with his with his expertise, I would have said, of Indian football. I kept him on board as my assistant manager, and that was a good move for me, and it worked well. And then the following year, the franchise was sold and bought by Hyderabad, which you could do because you were a top flight franchise. You had to, tick so many financial boxes, which we all have to do these days. Became Hyderabad, and in the third year, I led a production unit in Goa for the ISL 7, season 7, which was probably the most exciting. The announcement of Man City, the infrastructure that Man City are building globally. They had took over Mumbai City and invested heavily in that, not just in terms of finances, but academies. And so it's moving in the right direction. There's no doubt about it. But obviously, I was at Southend. I couldn't go back for this season 8, so I'm missing out this too.
Do you hope to go back then, maybe at some stage in the future? You said at the very start that you might look for something different.
I never say no to suggestions like that, but at the moment, family life. My wife's pregnant; she's due in January, and family life's keeping me in the Cotswolds at the moment. But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I probably need a couple of months break from football, to tell you the truth. But at the same time, you never know what's around the corner. I'm hopefully talking to a chairman after we finish this conference call or this Zoom call. I'm talking to a chairman at 1 o'clock, so who knows?
Not necessarily Conte for Spurs then, eh?
Thank you.
I think Newcastle might be looking for a manager as well. A lot of young coaches see opportunities abroad and think, is it for me then? You've gone a long way away to India and found it to be a fabulous experience. So would you recommend that if people can get the opportunity to go and get experience in a different country, whether it's closer to home or a long way from home, that they would do so?
I would seriously recommend it. I really would. I know the downside to it is obvious to a lot of people. The fact that you're actually going into the unknown. The massive downside to it is that you are quickly forgotten. You are easily forgotten, and you have to keep not just tags with British football or English football or the Premier League. You've got to make sure that you're still a noise out there somehow. And it's difficult. It really is. I had 3 years out there. And when I came back and had an opportunity to go to Southend, it's probably one of the main reasons why I jumped at it, to get back into, not the limelight, but get back into the public figure side of managing back in England. You'd be amazed at, the first couple of games, people were like, oh, I thought you were in India. And, there's no real recollection of you going out there, coming back or whatever, so you are easily forgotten, and there is that fear. But when you've got an opportunity and you make a decision, it's a family decision, it's a financial decision, it's a career decision. There's a lot of things to take into consideration, and you've got to do your homework on where you're going. I was going to a continent that was, it had a caste system that at the bottom end you would close your eyes and cringe if you see on a regular basis, and I did. And also in the same country, in the same continent, you've got multi-billionaires that walk in the same streets as what these poor people do. But you've got to embrace it, the whole system. You can't just embrace one end of it or the other end of it. You've got to embrace the whole system. And the hardest part of my job over in India was cricket. Probably 95% of the Indian children, whether it be male or female, are born and they put a cricket ball in the hand. And I was trying, from my first public interview, I was trying to put a football in the hand. And it's a difficult one. It really is. They're really into the cricket and they're into kabaddi, but they love sport. And if the ISL does eventually take off, and I believe there's a platform there for it to take off, it would be a great country to go and play football and a great country to go and coach.
Can you see the day then, Phil, when clubs in this country, Premier League clubs, or maybe they already have, are scouting the ISL?
For sure. Absolutely, for sure. As I say, the Manchester City group have now infiltrated, if you like, integrated with the ISL. Manchester United, there was talk of them doing a pre-season tour, playing 2 or 3 of the teams. And I kid you not, Maradona turned up at the end of his career just to walk around the stadium in Calcutta, and there was 110,000 people turned up for him just to walk around the stadium. He wasn't playing, he wasn't doing anything, he wasn't coaching. He was just appearing at the Calcutta Stadium. And they're just, if you can capture their attention with some of the greats, some of the big names, but to be serious, to be honestly, genuinely serious about football, they have to invest more in the school systems, in the academy systems, and they've got to invest heavily. The infrastructure is not quite there at the moment. The top end's not bad. The bottom end, it's too far away for me. They need to get a better system in terms of the academies.
Yeah, it's one of the great strengths of the football system in this country, isn't it? It's not just about the Premier League. It's not just about the 92, but it's about my little village club, and wherever you are in the Cotswolds, there's teams there, and they've probably got signs up there that they've had grants from the Premier League, from the PFA, because the money does trickle down, doesn't it?
Absolutely. When I first went to Southend, we had a company called Insure and Go, which was a Madrid-based company, and we went across to Madrid and played Real Madrid's C team, which is their under-21s version. Zinedine Zidane was the general manager. He wasn't managing the team at the time, but he was in the changing rooms. He was wandering around, making sure everything was okay. It was brilliant, absolutely fantastic. But at the end of the game, an agent came up to me offering the services of one of the young Madrid players that we had played, and he was talking clear English. He was translation didn't need a translator. He was talking good English, and he just said, "We are fascinated in Spain. This is in Europe. We're fascinated in Spain at what kind of crowds you get. What division are you in?" And I said, "The 4th tier. This is Southend." He said, "What crowds do you get?" I said, "Probably average about 5,000-6,000 next year." They couldn't believe it. 5,000 or 6,000 in a 4th tier just shows you the depth of the interest in football that we have in England. It's just phenomenal, and it should be something we're quite proud of.
And I think it's only the foreign managers, when they come over here, are those who are advocating that their under-23, under-21 teams should be playing in our Championship or League One. You don't hear anybody, I've certainly never heard anybody who is from this country advocate that. And we've seen, in the Papa John's Trophy game and
absolutely
the previous incarnations of that, there's no interest in seeing, for the sake of argument, a Championship team's under-21s turning up.
It's for their benefit. It's a sort of a rich get richer kind of argument, but that is what it is. And at the end of the day, I think the pandemic probably has brought around something that at the lower level you'll probably get a not a backhander. I hate saying that word, a backhander. It's like you're going to get a kickback somewhere down the line. It's not going to be parity by any stretch of the imagination, but the disparity between the Premier League and the Championship and the rest of us was too great. And I think that might level itself up with this pandemic. I don't know.
When you look at teams like Norwich and you say about the differences, they strike me as being almost too good for the Championship, but not good enough for the Premier League. And then further down in League One, you've got Rotherham United, who I think it's the last 5 seasons they've changed divisions. They've either gone up or they've gone down. They're too good for League One, but they're not good enough for the Championship. It's a strange sort of system, isn't it?
I think you had that with, if you remember in the 90s, you had that with West Bromwich Albion, and Bolton actually did it twice, and then Sam Allardyce came along, and Sam Allardyce was all about long-term plan, long-term preparation. He wasn't planning for the next game; he was planning down the line, and Bolton became that on the back end of Bruce Rioch getting promoted, going to Arsenal. Somebody else takes over. Colin Todd gets promoted, gets relegated, gets sacked just after that. Sam Allardyce comes along, gets promoted, stays there. Now that was the difference. The staying there and the sustainability of staying there is a long-term plan, and it's difficult to explain that to a lot of people, whether you're analysis, whether you're finances, or whether you're coaching, regardless of what it is.
Over the years, Phil, you've come up against many different coaches. We mentioned Sir Alex Ferguson, we mentioned Alan Shearer, Harry Redknapp, a load of the guys at the top end of the game. What have been the most memorable battles for you as a manager or as a coach on the sidelines? Because the game isn't just being played on that big rectangle. That game's also being played in those 2 technical areas, isn't it? With the piggy in the middle of the 4th official.
You could never beat Sir Alex Ferguson on them games, and then that's before the game, during the game, or after the game, and then you've got the game as well. You could never beat him with that. Arsene Wenger, I learned from the days with Sam Allardyce that you get under Arsene's skin to a certain extent. And he hated the fact that I think Bolton prided themselves on the fact that set pieces were a big part of the artillery, and it was also a weakness in Arsenal. It was a weakness in their ranks. So that's not a tactical thing. That's purely working towards something and eventually getting there, and then physicality taking over. When we beat Arsenal at the Emirates, it was a fantastic day, but it was down to the fact that we had Daniel Kuzan attacking the near post area, where we felt that William Gallas was a weakness in the team, and consequently we got the winning goal from that. But the equalising goal, if you remember rightly, Giovanni shot from 30 yards, 35 yards, going into the top corner. I mean, that in itself, it just shows you it's a culmination, the game, of a lot of things. The technical side of Giovanni got us an equaliser. The spirit of Hull City and the support that we had was something that we weren't going to lie down. And then the technicality, if you want to call it, or the organisational side of a strength versus a weakness, and that was the winning goal. That was a great day for me. That was a great day for Hull City. That was a great day for football, I thought, because I think the bookmakers rewrote the coupons after that, because I think we were 28 to 1. It was the biggest single bet that you could get on a team, 28 to 1 for to win a game of football, and they soon about turned on some of the high prices that they were offering. But consequently, going to Manchester United and getting beat 4-3 off Manchester United, and remembering the first question that the media asked me after the game, you must be delighted with the fact that you've scored 3 goals at Old Trafford. And I said, not really. I mean, we've been beaten 4-3. Yeah, but the last team to score 3 goals at Old Trafford was Bayern Munich, and it was 7 years ago, 7 previous years, So that in itself shows you the might of Manchester United at that time and what we had to put up with just to get a little bit of recognition as a team, a little old team from a fishing village called Hull.
Did you sense when you were at Hull City that you were the second favourite team for most people, in the same way that when they got promoted to the Premier League, Bradford City had done, Barnsley had done as well? I think maybe to a lesser extent Bournemouth, but all of these clubs, well, Bradford had been there many years earlier, 100 years or so ago, but Hull had never been in the Premier League before. Barnsley had never been in the Premier League or the top division, and it's quite refreshing, isn't it?
It is refreshing, but it's quite. If you look at that Premier League table before, during, or after the season, and see the teams that were in there, there weren't mighty teams. And I'm not being disrespectful of Portsmouth, of Stoke City, these were teams that were there on merit without a shadow of a doubt in the Premier League on merit, and they're pitching in as well. They were somewhere near middle table, middle of the table. Whereas we were fighting at the bottom. But your Sunderlands, your Newcastles, you close your eyes and think about the size of some of the clubs that were in there, and they were fighting perennial relegation battles or yo-yo clubs, whatever you want to call it. The Premier League now is sort of tiered and it's set in stone, which is sad to a certain extent, but it's also, everybody seems happy with it. The fact that you've got a top 6, that you've got a middle 12, and you've got bottom 3, or you've got 5 maybe that'll be fighting for relegation, and a lot of teams will be fighting to be a middle team, mediocre, picking up 150 million every year. There's nothing mediocre about that, So the Premier League in itself is a modern day phenomenon. What's been created over the last 25 years has been nothing short of brilliant. But we don't want it to stagnate now. You still need character. You still need people who are going to come and make you sit down and watch them. Put bums on seats. Be interested in it. You can't. I think the Palace result of the weekend was brilliant. Brilliant for football. Brilliant for new coaches coming forward. Brilliant for ex-players becoming coaches. And good interest to keep the game alive. Man City get beat at home off Crystal Palace. And it wasn't a red card. It was a Man City got beat at home off Crystal Palace. As simple as that. And I think that's vitally important to keep this. I think this legacy that's being created as the Premier League, keep it alive.
Talking of characters, what was Jimmy Bullard like to manage at Hull City?
I've got to say he was brilliant. I think the only reason I probably managed him in the way I managed him was because I understood him, and I understood him because I was probably that little tinker, 21, 22, 23-year-old in the Hartlepool changing room, same in the Halifax one, same in the Bolton one. Many a time, you come in on a Monday morning and Bruce Rioch would walk into the great Bolton changing room that used to have like sort of Nat Lofthouse and great legends in it, and Brown in the office. It's one of them where you understand that you're not doing anything nastily. You understand that you're not purposefully trying to get anybody in trouble, but you're borderline mischief, you're borderline positive, negative, whichever way you want to call it. But that sort of adds to your character personally, and it also adds to your character of the changing room. But again, I'll emphasise the fact that Jimmy wasn't off the map crazy and getting us into lots of trouble was the fact that he had Ian Ashby alongside him. Ian Ashby was his best mate in the change room, and what a Hull City legend he is. Having captained the club in all 4 divisions and in the Premier League and surviving in the Premier League, and not being embarrassed by any great Manchester United midfield or Arsenal midfield. He actually held his own in all 4 divisions. For him to have an arm round Jimmy Bullard, or probably should I say 2 hands round his throat, would have been the key to any success that we, and talking about we, Jimmy Bullard, me, Ian Ashby, Hull City, ever had.
That was only 10, 12 years or so ago. Are there those characters around now in football? And can clubs at the top end, do you think, afford to have them in the team?
It's difficult. It is a good question. I don't think they've completely been ironed out of the world of football. I think there's a different type of character in our world. I think the world's moved on quite a bit. And in terms of, yes, modern day technology in itself, a character comes out in a different way now. And for me to explain that as a 62-year-old to an 18-year-old coming into the game, explaining to him what I will accept and what I won't accept, rules and regulations, there's lots of things that have moved on. I think the game has benefited from the technicality side. Like I say, it's almost a glorified computer game now. But you can't get away from it. It's still human. It's still very technical. It's still very, very quick. I go back to my days at Bolton under Sam Allardyce when he brought in JJ Kocher and Bernard Mendy. And we were getting beaten by Fulham. Or was it QPR? Maybe been QPR, first game of the season. And we were 3-0 down at half-time. And both Bernard Mendy and JJ Kocher were sitting on the bench behind us for the whole of the second half because Sam had took them off. And the reason why he took them off, and I'll never forget this, he always said, every foreign player looks at that TV and they watch the Premier League and they all think they can play in it. And then all of a sudden the reality kicks in when you're out there, how quick it actually is. So he pulled them off at half-time and they sat on the bench for 3 or 4 games and watched it up front and personal and got close to it, but got up to speed with it. And once you get up to speed with it, I think the modern day player has gone so far up to speed with it. It's pushing it to unbelievable boundaries. The measurements of some of the players, the amount of energy levels that they bring in, the amount of distance that they're covering, the amount of pace that they're putting into the game is absolutely phenomenal today.
Cast your mind back then to when you were at Hartlepool and Halifax. If the manager had said to you, right, we want you wearing one of these things that it looks like a bra, it's your GPS and everything, we're going to tell you how many kilometres you've run in a game. What would have been the reaction from the likes of, say, you and Terry McPhillips and Billy Eyre?
Aye. I've always been a big believer in that. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm still in the game. Is that you never turn your nose up to anything new. You have a look at it, you explore it, you try and advance yourself and try and advance the game. And there's been a lot of suggestions out there, many suggestions out there that have failed. But even in Prozone, I remember Steve McLaren in Prozone, and when Steve then brought in the white leather chairs for the players to watch Prozone on, and they were massaging at the same time. And I walked into Derby County, and there was this. I can only describe the room as a relic. it was a room of 25 massage chairs, white leather massage chairs, with Prozone screens in front of them, and nobody used them because all the players were falling asleep watching the game. Now, in itself, he was just trying to cover all the bases. He was going through the analysis, he was doing the Prozone, you were watching a game, you were also getting recovery. You know what he's trying to do. He's trying to tick a lot of boxes in an hour session or an hour and a half session. But I've always looked at modern day technology and always give it a chance everywhere I've been. And if you can afford it, again, going back to Derby, I got the job based on the fact that they asked me a question in the interview. They asked me what my ideal squad would be. And I said, you couldn't afford it. But realistically, 2 players per position. Right? So you're talking 22 players. And I accepted 21 players and Prozone. So when they said you can have 22 players, there's the budget for 22 players. I said, give me 21. And Prozone, I think, was going to cost me 50 grand at the time. So give me 21 and Prozone. And that's how far into technology I was. I'd rather have the technology so I can advance and educate the players that I've got in the change room to be better players.
And how far down is the technology being used? You've been at Southend in the conference. Were you using it there? Is it used in National League North and South as well? Or
it's being used sparingly. It's again a budgetary decision that you have to make. And I'm not talking 50 grand for a championship club. I'm talking about maybe 10,000. It could be a 5,000 or a 10,000 deal for one piece of equipment. You get the better end of it at 10,000. You get the worst end of it at 5,000. It can be used. It can be. I always talk about, when you have to maximize resources, and that is a well-coined phrase by everybody. Maximize. What does it actually mean? Well, go and get 2 or 3 university students, from the local university, and bring them in and educate them. In the same time, you're getting free of charge education, and you're getting a service delivered. You can do it if you really put your mind to it. I think that's what we did at Bolton. I think that's why we got ahead of the game. I think that's why everybody thought Sam was this, Sam was that. Interns are free of charge, and the education system love you taking them. Well, why don't we take 100 of them and put them in every football club and maximise that resource? So there's ways and means of doing it, but you have to have an open mind.
Well, I stress to my media students, Phil, that getting in an internship or work experience at a lower level, might even be Northwest Counties League, is going to be fantastic for you, because you might be writing something for the website, filming the game, doing some commentary, doing some interviews, rather than if you're at a bigger club, can you go out and get us a cup of tea each? You're actually going to be doing it. Is that the same for the analysis guys then, when they come to football clubs for their internships, that they are genuinely all being used if they are lower down the level?
There will be at my club, that's for sure. I tried to get 3 interns in the process at the start of the season. I had one head of analysis, and he was excellent, young lad. He came through the ranks at the academy, but he had come through an internship. So again, he got a foothold in the game, as it were. I recently spoke to one of my analysis guys that I had at Hull City, and he's at RB Leipzig. And he just moved on. I think he went to Red Bull in New York. So you can, if you've got a mind to it, if you've got a manager who understands how important it is, analysis, because if you don't think it's important, you're in the wrong game as far as I'm concerned. You've got to know what you're going to say to the press lads before they twist you. And I don't mean that in a nasty way, before they actually can get you into a downward spiral regarding the interview. You've got to have a cut-off point. You've got to have a button that says, right, if I give for instance, why we were so lackluster today, it was because of this, that, and the other. And I then come out with the performance stats in terms of the physical side of it. So there's all sorts of ways of using it and delivering it, but it is nothing short of a necessity. It's an absolute prerequisite that you have it at your football club, or you're never going to improve.
And wherever you go next then, or if you were at a club already, would you want to have that say in that as the manager, or would you consider yourself to be a head coach and I've got a football director or somebody else who is looking after everything else and I'm just there to coach the first team? It's
a really good question, because the modern day clubs now, even the Southend Uniteds that have now gone into the National League. I had a chief executive, I had a director of football, I had a head of the academy. I think that the manager, even though you've got a director of football, I think that the manager, of which I was, I think he has to have he has to have a not a power, it's the wrong thing, but he has to, his final say on football regarding going to the board of directors or the chairman or whatever has to be above them three guys that I've just mentioned. But it doesn't sound right, does it? Director of football, by definition, you should be above the manager, or you are above the manager. But, you know, the final say where football is concerned, surely the owner can only give that to the manager. And if you have a director of football, let's direct traffic. Let's push football in a direction where you want it to go from the football club's perspective. But I think, you know, the professionalism where analysis is concerned can only stand you in good stead in terms of football. Because if you are ahead of the headlines, if you are ahead of the question, if you are ahead of the opposition, you can only go in one direction as far as I'm concerned. And, you know, you have to have them answers as a manager. I always remember Sam when he used to go straight out to do an interview way back in the day, 1999 or 2000, when he was going out to the press. He had a meeting with his analysis guy before he went out. Tell me what happened here. Tell me what happened there. Tell me what happened here. So that he had his decision or his discussion with the media people. He had it he was ahead of them, you know. So you never then look the fool. If the media guy's been waiting 30 minutes to talk to you after a game, and he's watched the full match himself and he's analysed it himself, then he might have a better question. So you've got to have the answer ready for these people.
Yeah, I remember him actually having looked at a goal in a game at Crystal Palace on his laptop straight after the game, and then came out to the media and was showing, I can't remember the exact scenario, but he actually had the laptop there and was saying, look, this has happened, he's here, he's there, etc., etc. I think there was an offside issue in it. If you could change the law in the game, Phil, just going off on a sidetrack here, if you were part of the shadowy group of people called the International Football Association Board who make up and change the laws of the game every year or so, what if there was one thing that you could change, what would it be and why?
Well, I'm going to be consistent in this answer. I think way back in about 2001, 2002, we brought Mark Halsey into Bolton Wanderers to work with us. And having
Premier League referee, for those who don't know.
Yeah, Premier League referee. And Mark, he was a London boy, but he had married a girl in Bolton, and he lived not far from where we worked. And we were sort of at loggerheads to a certain extent with the hierarchy because of the law changes that were going on at that time. We were sort of exploiting them to a certain extent. There was the new offside law came out. Mike Riley was enforcing it, and it was. I wouldn't say it was carnage, but it was one of the new offside laws. The focal point of the new offside law was coming out just before the final of the Carling Cup, I think it was, and we were playing Middlesbrough at the Millennium Stadium, and the new law was in transition. It was in change. It wasn't decided, you know. And this is in the middle of the season. It was crazy. It was farcical to a certain extent. But it's all been part and parcel of what's going on now. You know, VAR, fourth official being connected with the officials on the field of play. But the one law I said then I would change and I would stick with now, and regardless of who you're playing or who you're managing or who you're refereeing, the guy that is the best paid player on the pitch, the referee should have parity with him on a weekly basis. And that's how important that is. Now, that is the pinnacle of a referee, the Premier League, for sure. But it's also the biggest scrutiny going on where the Premier League is concerned. The whole world is looking at VAR and mocking it to a certain extent, but we're going to stick with it and it's going to get better. So the referees will always have to go through that period of stick first, but they have to stay with it and they will get better. But they need to be the academy of referees now. And I quoted this morning. Say if there's a 18-year-old boy from Fiji and he has aspirations of being a pro footballer but can't be because he ain't good enough, wants to be a referee, then he has to look at this. Where do I go to get to the Premier League in England? Because that is the pinnacle of a referee's career. But there has to be an academy system now of referees at an early age that brings them through earlier. So I would change the law on referees. I would give them parity in terms of the highest paid player on the field of play should be the referee.
I'm sure referees would agree with you on that one, especially when they see some of the eye-watering wages. Just going back to the changes then, when they're in the offside law, I remember covering a game when you played at Leicester, and I think that was the one which really sparked all the controversy, because you had Kevin Davies, I think it was, standing right in front of the Leicester goalkeeper, and as the free kick is taken, he's run, so he's gone from an offside position to being onside, and that did cause carnage for days, didn't it? It was all over the back pages. It was Sky Sports News. It was all everybody was talking about. Big Sam has come up with a way to beat the offside law.
Well, we came up with it probably based on the information that we'd received from the Referees Association, and it was a night that it was going to be put into practice, and it was live on Sky. And when we did it, we thought it was a farce. We can't believe we're going to get away with this, but we are. The rules are going to be changed. So I think you said Kevin Davies. I think it was Kevin Nolan and Michael Ricketts were standing either side of the goalkeeper, and then because the free kick taker was coming towards the ball, they were moving away from the goalkeeper and away from the goal, and consequently the ball ends up in the back of the net. We won the game. I think we won the game 2-1. So straight away there was, because of that, there's all sorts of hell let loose, from a referee's perspective. It doesn't look right. From an honesty perspective, it doesn't look right. From a rules perspective, it doesn't look right, because it's in the middle of a competition. There's all sorts of things wrong with it, but that's what I'm saying about the referees. They've gone through this period of growth where the Premier League's concerned. The Premier League's just got bigger and bigger and bigger. It's stronger, and it's just worldwide phenomenon. And the referees have sort of remained a tight-knit group. And I've been thinking they need to expand. They need to share knowledge and information. And I know that they're trying to do certain things. The PGMOL are across in India at the moment, and they're trying to expand. But you know what it's like? It's like a referee's doing a game, and somebody else is telling them how to referee. That ain't the answer. The answer is it has to be from a grassroots kind of perspective, from an academy kind of perspective, from a learning or an education kind of perspective, so that the next 25, 26, 27-year-old referee are not too young. They're absolutely ready for it, because the 45-year-old referees we're all saying are too old. Well, a 25-year-old needs to be ready. So there has to be an academy system. That was my whole argument with regards to referees.
I apologise to Kevin Nolan for getting the wrong Kevin in there, but I imagine that Kevin Davies was in there somewhere as a bit of a battering ram. Final question, Phil, because I know you're going to get grilled by a club chairman shortly as well. So hopefully that will produce a positive response for you. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given by anybody?
You've got to go to the top on that one, and say Sir Alex Ferguson once phoned me up amidst a little bit of controversy or headlines in a paper for the wrong reasons or whatever from the weekend, and it's a Monday morning sober up call. Phil, football is full of battles, fights, arguments around every corner. He said, don't go looking for them. Don't go looking for them. They'll find you. So that sort of sobered me up to a certain extent. It looked like I wanted to take the world on in every conversation I was having. I was thinking, was a fight, was an argument, was somebody trying to bring us down, belittle us, whatever. And it was a sobering thought that a guy that's been at the top as long as he has and takes everybody on, by the way, said to me, don't go looking for fights around every corner. So that's all me up.
Right. Okay. We're just about losing the signal there, I think, there as well. You're starting to break up just a little bit. Phil, thanks very much for being with us this morning. Hope the students have benefited from what you've had to say. We wish you the very best of luck with your 1 o'clock interview with the football club chairman. We'll look forward to seeing the news later on tonight.